The moment Michelle snapped and said, "If you hate the new office rules, you can just quit and leave," I'd already filed the damn paperwork in my head. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the algorithm she was trying to bully into the company vault was already half patented under my name. Provisional, time-stamped, notarized. Every sleepless night, every coffee-fueled equation written on my apartment window in dry erase marker. It was mine. And I wasn't going to let a failed wearable tech Barbie with a LinkedIn podcast and a God complex steal it. But let me rewind. Before the Slack sermons, before the beanbags and badge scanners, before she thought she owned everything that breathed inside a conference room, I had peace. 6 years ago, I joined Norellis Tech when it was barely scraping Series B. I didn't care about office perks or branding bullshit. I cared about models. Compression algorithms, to be exact. Specifically, neural net compression that could reduce AI training loads by over half without a drop in accuracy. In English, we could train better AIs for a fraction of the cost. That kind of math doesn't live on company time. It lives in your blood. So, I built a team. Quiet geniuses. Misfits. People who didn't do small talk but could optimize gradient descent in their sleep. We worked in silence. Head down, lights dim. Our unofficial motto was, "Don't demo, deliver." No press releases, no LinkedIn clout chasing, just notebooks, code commits, and results that whispered louder than any keynote ever could. The company gave us space because we delivered. And in that space, I laid the groundwork for something no one saw coming. A breakthrough in compression protocol so clean it felt illegal. I cleaned the math on weekends, I debugged by sunrise, I ran tests from my own gear at home so the company couldn't claim a damn bite of it. By the way, if you're enjoying the story, take 2 seconds to like the video and hit subscribe. Over 97% of people listen without doing either, but it makes a huge difference for the team and keeps stories like this coming. Seriously. Thanks. Now, back to the lab. See, I wasn't naive. I knew corporate would sniff around once we got close to patent territory, so I documented everything, on personal time, with personal equipment, using a pre-registered LLC I set up 3 years ago. That LLC, it was just a line item in Delaware's registry back then. Today, it's the wall between me and a 6-figure legal brawl. Because here's the thing, when you're building something game-changing inside a corporation, you have to plan for the moment they realize they want it more than they want you. We were 1 week away from submitting the final math to legal when the Slack message landed. Please welcome Michelle Stanson, our new Chief Technology Officer. Her profile picture was all teeth and tech speak. Her bio, former founder of GlowLink's Wearable Wellness Meets AI. Translation: a 40 crater of VC money and a ghost town of unpaid interns. But the board needed someone dynamic, and she came cheap after burning through her last startup's goodwill. Within 2 days, she'd scheduled daily all-hands, removed our flexible hour policy, and instituted a badge accountability protocol, meaning every time I went to the bathroom, it got logged like I was in preschool. But worse was the ape policy update. Michelle announced in the middle of a Thursday all-hands, smiling like she was offering free lunch, that all intellectual property created on company-aligned time would now be retroactively claimed as corporate property. Retroactively. Like a bureaucratic time machine designed to steal. I locked eyes with my team. No one said anything. But I could feel the tension radiating off them like a server room in July. They knew we were close. And Michelle? She was sniffing around like a wolf in a meat locker, convinced she could take the crown and call it vision. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that I'd already seen this storm coming a year ago, and I'd already packed an umbrella. The sketches were dated, the metadata scrubbed and stored, the declarations emailed to myself and 2 lawyers, my name, my timestamp, my prototype. Norellis funded the lights, I built the lightning, and now the clouds were rolling in. She breezed into the office on a Monday morning like she'd been waiting her whole life for this entrance. Heels clacking, blazer sharp enough to slice drywall, and an aura that screamed, "I meditate harder than you work." Michelle Stanson, fresh off torching a wellness app startup that promised to biohack your joy and somehow managed to blow through $18 million in less than a year. Now she was here, announced via a cringy company-wide Slack blast with phrases like reinvigorate innovation culture and infuse agile synergy into our verticals. I almost choked on my tea. Her first act? Mandatory 9 a.m. alignment meetings every day. Nothing says innovation like dragging 20 engineers into a Zoom just to hear her mispronounce Kubernetes. Flexible hours? Gone. Quiet workspaces? Gutted. She installed whiteboards in the break room with slogans like "Move fast and breathe deep," and ordered beanbag chairs for the main dev floor to spark spontaneous collaboration. My lead data architect has scoliosis. He took one look at that beanbag and said, "I'd rather code standing in traffic." But it wasn't just the vibes that shifted. She came after the bones of the company, the intellectual property. In her second all hands, Michelle stood there grinning like she was giving away Teslas. "Effective immediately," she chirped. "All innovation created using company resources during company time or within company facilities will be recognized as Norellis Tech intellectual property. This includes, but is not limited to, prototypes, white papers, notebooks, and early concept ideation." She paused, then added with syrupy menace, "Retroactively." You could feel the temperature drop, like the room collectively realized it had been slapped and asked to say thank you. I scanned the Zoom tiles. No one blinked. No one smiled. My hands went cold. That one word, retroactively, was the first real crack in the ice beneath me. Because here's the thing. Our lab didn't follow traditional timelines. Breakthroughs didn't come from 9 to 5 hours and quarterly sprints. They came from 11:47 p.m. Flashes of insight, code written on train rides, proof sketched in the margins of takeout menus. For me personally, the compression algorithm that Michelle was trying to rope into her shiny new policy, that came out of a year of off-the-clock insomnia and one hell of a physics sabbatical. I had receipts, time-stamped notebooks, non-corporate commits, Git logs from my own machines. And suddenly, this woman with a startup graveyard and a Pinterest board full of CEO energy was declaring it all hers. Retroactively. I forwarded the announcement to my IP counsel. Subject line, "So, this bullshit count as theft yet?" She replied in 3 minutes, "Not if you stay ahead of it, let's talk." Still, I didn't panic, not yet. I just kept working, quietly. I watched Michelle strut through the dev floor like she was blessing the peasants, tossing out phrases like ideation clusters and culture hygiene. She reorganized the entire R&D division into pods, each with a happiness liaison who was supposed to track emotional energy metrics. We built a machine that can compress neural weights by 60%, and she wanted us logging how grateful we felt for our coffee selection. But I could feel it, the pressure, like the walls were shifting, just slightly, every day. My engineers came to me with worried faces. "Is our project safe? Do we have to loop her into sprint planning now? She's asking for access to the codebase. Do I give it to her?" And I realized they didn't know. They didn't know how close we were to losing everything. They didn't know I'd already started building the fire escape. I told them, "Just keep pushing the build, I'll handle the rest." And I did. I started preparing my clean room, the legal one. I dusted off the LLC paperwork, backed up my non-company commits to triple encrypted drives, scanned every napkin sketch and dated them. Because Michelle wasn't just here to manage, she was here to claim. And the second she realized what we'd built, she'd try to carve her name into it like a spoiled kid with a knife and a tree trunk. And when she finally demanded a meeting with me, arguing about alignment expectations and IP continuity ownership, I already knew what I was going to say. I just didn't think I'd say it quite so soon. Michelle picked the glass conference room on purpose. You know the kind, fishbowl walls, wide visibility, performative transparency. She sat at the head of the table like a smug little queen, fingers laced, that teeth-bearing smile already loaded before I even sat down. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't bother with small talk. "I need clarity," I said, placing my folder of documentation on the table. "The algorithm I've been developing, the one your new policy wants to pull in retroactively, was built off hours, off-site, on non-company hardware. I've logged the commits, and every prototype predates your arrival by months. You don't own it." She didn't even glance at the folder, just smirked and reached into her bag like she was about to hand me a birthday card. Instead, she slid a one-page HR form across the table with perfectly manicured fingers. "Then just quit," she said, voice as sweet and flat as canned peaches. "It's not that complicated." I looked down at the paper. Voluntary resignation. Today's date already filled in. Her signature line left blank, ready for the performance. She was expecting me to grovel or argue or bark. She wanted a scene. She thought she was pushing me into a corner. What she didn't realize? I built the exit before she ever walked through the door. Appreciate the exit plan, I said coolly, standing without touching the form. Her smile flickered. Just a crack, just enough. I walked out of that glass tomb, straight past the wide-eyed interns and slack-happy middle managers, watching through the transparent walls like it was a damn reality show. Went to my office, closed the door, and started packing. Not panicking, packing. Smooth, efficient. I took only what was mine. The notebooks I'd written in at my apartment, the encrypted flash drives logged with non-company IP addresses, the sketches drawn during weekends on printer paper that never touched a Norellis desk. The real fun was in the backups. A custom-built archive node, my personal machine, never once tethered to company Wi-Fi, sat under my desk. I loaded it quietly. Every clean commit, every hashed algorithmic build, every scratchpad schema written under my own LLC header. Fully tagged, fully timestamped, fully mine. No trace of their infrastructure, no trace of Michelle. As I packed the last folder, my lead engineer walked in, eyes wide. "You serious?" he asked. "Dead serious," I replied. "They want to play games with IP? Let them do it without the person who wrote the actual math." He hesitated. "What do we do?" I gave him a card, one I hadn't handed out in years. The name of my LLC embossed across the front. Quiet, clean, and prepped for what came next. "Tell the team to finish the build if they want," I said. "But be ready. The real version's going somewhere else." I dropped my badge in the tray at reception without a word. The HR rep blinked at me like she expected a meltdown. I gave her a nod, turned, and walked out of that building for the last time. By the time Michelle realized what had happened, I was already 10 hours into a filing session. Legal Zoom, then direct USPTO upload. 3 provisional patents, one for each component: the compression layer, the model pruning logic, and the adaptive training feedback loop. I uploaded notarized timestamps, attached video demos recorded on my own devices, linked metadata hashes to external commits. Every signature, mine. Every keystroke, logged. She thought she'd boxed me in with a single sheet of paper, but I'd been building the walls around her since the moment she opened her mouth. She thought she won. She had no idea the countdown had already started. The air in my apartment was dead silent that night, like even the walls knew to stay out of my way. I sat at my desk, 3 monitors lit, a cup of gas station coffee gone cold, my cat curled on the windowsill like she was supervising. I wasn't angry. Anger was for amateurs. This was precision. The kind of precision you cultivate over years of watching corporate vultures circle a carcass they didn't kill. The first patent filing was already prepped. Compression Protocol v1.3. The metadata was clean, the hash logs intact, and every commit linked to my own hardware. I used a secure timestamping service to log the zip archive 6 weeks ago. I pulled it now, decrypted the backup, and uploaded it directly to the USPTO under my LLC, Oxalis Systems, registered out of Delaware with me as the sole managing member. Not a trace of Norellis on the paperwork, not a bite. Then came the second, the recursive model pruning logic, filed under adaptive efficiency routing in large-scale neural architectures. That one was the trickiest, partially because the math danced dangerously close to a published university paper from 2 years prior. But I had proof of divergence. My implementation skipped the gradient averaging step and used tensor dropout differently. The paper cited a classic approach. Mine rewrote the tempo entirely. I cited the math, attached my implementation deltas, and uploaded. The third filing, Adaptive Training Loop Optimization, was my favorite. Cleanest code, most innovative. That one I didn't even finish at Norellis. It was born in a sleepless rage one weekend in Flagstaff, after our CTO delayed funding to test emotionally intuitive AI avatars. I'd coded it in a hotel room on my own MacBook while watching late-night reruns of Jeopardy and eating gas station trail mix. No company gear, no company dime, and definitely no Michelle. Once the filings were in, I hit the next layer: insulation, legal firewall. I contacted my attorney, Bethany, who I'd worked with during my post-grad consultancy days, sent her a full documentation chain, screenshots, repo logs, email records, the Slack thread where I asked legal for IP guidance and got radio silence. Her response came in minutes. "We're covered. But let's harden the language. Retroactivity doesn't apply to out-of-scope development unless explicitly contracted. You were never contracted, not even close." Then I reached out to two old academic mentors, Dr. Lena Forsyth and Dr. Mikhail Resnick, both NSF reviewers. Both saw early iterations of my work at a closed symposium last year. I didn't need them to testify, just to confirm what they already knew. I asked for peer witness statements with dates and brief notes. They agreed within the hour. "Glad to see you're finally filing," Resnick replied. "Honestly, I was wondering what took you so long." I didn't answer, because I knew what took me so long. The illusion of safety. The lie we tell ourselves when we think the system will protect the builder. That if we just do good work, it'll speak for itself. Michelle broke that illusion. I should probably thank her for that. The last step was sealing the boundary. I scrubbed my local network, purged all Norellis credentials, changed VPN keys, archived every email string where I asked about IP assignment and got stonewalled or dismissed. I compiled a digital chain of custody file and uploaded it to my cloud vault, multi-factor encrypted with a dead man timer tied to my phone. If anything happened, it would be sent to the USPTO with a press contact and an automatic tweet scheduled from my dormant tech blog. Paranoid? No. Prepared. Michelle wanted ownership. What she never understood was ownership isn't about who shows up to the boardroom with the biggest smile. It's about who builds the bricks before the walls go up. I didn't need a badge to win. I needed clean math, clean logs, and one airtight chain of evidence. And now I had all three. 2 weeks after I walked out of Norellis with my notebooks and a face like granite, I got a text from Javier, one of the few people still left in the trenches who hadn't sold their soul to beanbag diplomacy. "Yo, something's happening. Michelle just stormed out of legal." I didn't respond, just opened a fresh document on my desktop and started taking notes. 3 hours later, I had the full story. Michelle, in her infinite brilliance, had pushed her team to submit a joint provisional patent on the compression protocol. Apparently, she packaged the filing with a white paper draft cobbled together by one of the newer engineers, someone who hadn't even touched the actual math, just dressed it up in buzzwords like quantum-adjacent optimization and hyper-efficient alignment pathways. She added her name to the author list, of course, because nothing says leadership like slapping your initials on a formula you didn't write. But the moment they hit submit, the USPTO system kicked back a notice. Prior art detected. Application conflicts with existing provisional filing ID number 67495 to 3X, submitted by Oxalis Systems LLC. Conflict includes codebase hashes, schema labels, and identical lead authorship tag, H. Salin. That's me. Code doesn't lie, hashes don't forget. And the USPTO, they don't play referee, they play record keeper. They saw the match, flagged the duplication, and effectively shut it down before the ink could dry. That's when legal started unraveling, because it wasn't just a collision, it was a contradiction. Michelle had paraded through that office declaring ownership. She'd promised the board a portfolio, but now the very first crown jewel of her reign was legally stamped as someone else's, mine. Javier told me someone in legal, probably Rob, their in-house IP counsel, started digging. He found an email buried 6 weeks back, marked low priority and archived under MISC review. It was from me. Subject line, Declaration of Independent Filing Intent, Salin. I'd sent it directly to legal, with Michelle CC'd on a Thursday morning at 8:14 a.m., before her first policy change, before the Slack sermon, before the culture pivot became a full-blown IP land grab. In the body, I outlined my intent to file 3 components of the compression algorithm independently, under pre-existing personal development, citing timestamps, metadata lineage, and my LLC's founding date. No one responded, no questions, no flags, just silence. Now that silence had become a siren. Michelle reportedly tried to claim the email was unauthorized and lacked formal routing, but internal policy, ironically the one she updated herself, defined official notice as any communication with legal involving IP ownership. She'd sealed her own trap and stepped in it. Javier told me the panic spread fast. The CTO's office stayed locked for most of the afternoon. Legal pinged the board for urgent clarification on IP conflict liability. Engineers were asked to halt all work on the compression stack pending review. Michelle canceled 2 meetings, then 3. Then her Slack status flipped to in focus mode. Translation? Crisis. I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at the glowing screen showing 3 provisional confirmations, each bearing my name, each time-stamped and uncontested. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a smile. Not a triumphant grin, not yet. Just a small, bitter curl of the lips. The kind you wear when the people who doubted you finally trip over the thing you warned them about. They thought I was bluffing. They thought silence meant surrender. What they never realized was, some of us don't need to raise our voice to burn a system down. We just write the rules before they do. Michelle called the emergency meeting for 8 a.m. sharp with the subject line, Urgent IP Clarification, Mandatory Attendance. No agenda, no context. Just one of those vague corporate summons that makes your stomach twist even before your first cup of coffee. Javier said the mood in the room was somewhere between an audit and a funeral. The engineers trickled in quiet, tense, avoiding eye contact. Michelle was already at the head of the table, hair pinned tight, lips tighter, her laptop open, a single document pulled up, a partially redacted rejection notice from the USPTO. In the header, 3 words that had detonated her entire pitch deck. Conflict, oxalis systems. She didn't start with pleasantries, no jokes, no warm-up, no PowerPoint fluff, just fire. I want to know, she said slowly, controlled rage curling through each syllable, how this was allowed to happen, how she, and she didn't say my name, managed to get access to final outputs, build commit sequences, and submit patentable material without our oversight. Nobody moved. She let the silence boil for a few seconds, then turned her eyes to the junior engineer across from her. Fresh hire, smart, scared. His hands were balled into fists in his hoodie pocket. Well, she pressed. You were on the compression branch. You had eyes on the commits. Did she, what, clone it? Steal it? He looked around, swallowed hard, then said the line that cracked the entire facade. She didn't steal anything, he said quietly. She wrote the final commits. All of them. The pruning functions, the batch loss modifier, the zero redundancy layer, those were hers. We just built around them. Michelle's face didn't move, but the color drained from her neck upward like a flood running in reverse. She leaned back, tapped something into her laptop, and forced a smile. That's not possible. We own everything in the repo. At that point, Rob, the head of legal, cleared his throat from the far end of the table. He looked pale, not panicked, but close. He pulled up his inbox on the conference screen and opened a PDF attachment with a file name that had been buried in the system for weeks. Oxalis, LLC, License Waiver Salin. PDF there in high-resolution clarity was a notarized waiver. My signature, dated, stamped, filed 2 weeks before my exit. The document detailed which portions of the build were mine, which were subject to independent licensing, and which were considered open source adaptation. Legalese, yes, but razor sharp and airtight. Michelle stared at it like it was a ghost. No one spoke. The engineers looked at each other, unsure if breathing too loudly would get them dragged into the line of fire. Someone whispered, "She filed it before the policy update." Rob nodded. "She did. She emailed us. It was logged. We didn't follow up." Michelle leaned forward, voice brittle. "So you're telling me she walked out, filed the patents, and we never even contested it?" Rob didn't blink. "There was nothing to contest. Her work predates the CTO policy. She notified us. You CC'd the email." Another silence. He let it hang there like a guillotine. Javier told me that moment was the first time Michelle actually looked small, not weak, but cornered. Like the realization had finally landed that she wasn't just dealing with a disgruntled engineer, she was dealing with someone who'd outmaneuvered her with nothing but foresight, math, and a paper trail. And the kicker? I wasn't even in the room, but I didn't need to be. My name was on the waiver. My code was in the hashes. My timestamp was on the filing, and my absence said more than any confrontation ever could. They'd tried to box me out of my own creation. Now they were sitting in that same box, walls closing in, wondering when the lid would seal. Michelle went on the offensive. That afternoon, a neatly polished internal memo went out under her name, clarifying IP ethics and responsibilities. The tone was syrupy professionalism with a hint of legal menace. According to her, I had willfully sidestepped standard disclosure channels and failed to offer the company a formal opportunity to license or acquire the resulting innovation prior to external filing. Translation: I betrayed the mothership. Never mind that the mothership only noticed we existed when the patent got flagged. Now she was trying to frame me as some rogue genius who burned the village for fun. But her version of the story didn't hold for long, because someone in HR, God bless corporate incompetence, forgot to lock down the internal compliance threads. And one of those threads included a time-stamped exchange between me and legal, 6 weeks before my exit. In it, I'd clearly offered a 14-day review window, stating that I intended to file under my LLC unless formally engaged in a licensing conversation within that period. The deadline passed. No response, not even a courtesy, "Will review soon," just silence. That thread got leaked, first to a couple of engineers, then to the R&D Slack, then, somehow, to a board assistant. It didn't take long before one of the lead investors, Marcus Eldridge, the same guy who'd walked through our lab back in January and asked about the whiteboard sketches, caught wind of the mess. He dialed into the weekly investor sync. Cameras on, no small talk, just one question, dropped like a hammer in the middle of Michelle's slide deck. "Is the patent even yours to license now?" She tried to sidestep, said the filings were under review, said there were gray areas regarding contributory work and corporate infrastructure usage, but Marcus cut her off. I remember seeing those equations, back in January, in a locked lab, with her name on the board. That was 6 months ago. She told me then she was filing soon. So again, do we own this, or did you just let it walk out the door? No answer. Just the sound of Michelle flipping through digital notes, looking for anything that would make this not her fault. Rob, legal, stepped in with what dignity he had left. The USPTO conflict response confirms sole authorship under Oxalis Systems LLC. There's no evidence of corporate contribution beyond general facility usage. She's within her rights. Marcus leaned back. Then what the hell are we doing here? That was the moment the board flipped. Not with a vote, not with a formal announcement, just a shift in posture, tone, silence. They didn't believe her anymore. They believed the math, the metadata, the cold logic of timestamps that didn't lie, didn't spin, didn't gaslight. Michelle tried to save face in one last Slack AMA that evening. She wrote, "In fast-moving innovation spaces, occasional friction is expected. We respect all contributors and remain committed to a collaborative future." Friction? She called stripping a creator of their own work friction. I didn't respond. I didn't have to, because now every engineer knew the truth, every board member knew the cost, and every investor knew the one person who'd actually built the thing they were trying to monetize was no longer wearing their badge. But she had the signature, she had the filing, and she had the receipts. Turns out, you don't need a corporate title to be believed. You just need a clock that ticks louder than the lies. 3 days after Michelle's last desperate Slack AMA, my LLC inbox lit up with a subject line that read, "Confidential licensing inquiry, request for call." The domain, Valtric AI, Norelis' fiercest competitor in the compression space. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the screen, letting the irony soak in like a warm bath. They hadn't just traced the USPTO rejection. They'd followed the paper trail, the metadata, and the authorship tags. They weren't guessing. They knew exactly who built the engine they just watched Norelis stall out on. The message was polite, professional, and very direct. They wanted a discussion about exclusive licensing. They didn't care about Michelle's drama or Norelis' claims. They just wanted the tech. Compression at 60% training reduction with no significant accuracy loss? That wasn't just innovative. That was market moving. They even attached a draft term sheet. 7 figures, with escalators based on implementation benchmarks. I didn't respond right away. I called Bethany, my attorney, and forwarded everything. Her only reply, "We've been expecting this." Meanwhile, back at Norelis, the board moved. Michelle was officially suspended pending audit. The statement came from legal, not PR. That's how you know it wasn't a performance. It was containment. Investors had started asking real questions. Documents were being pulled, and once they started poking into the version control logs, the narrative collapsed under its own weight. Every commit showed my username. Every schema file carried my tag. Every piece of the compression protocol, down to the early testbed results, was traced back to environments that existed outside corporate servers. Javier told me Michelle's face went blank when the auditors presented a simple list: file dates, IP origins, and repository metadata. None of it tied to Norelis infrastructure. Even the development testbed, That was mine too. I'd run simulations from a personal server cluster I kept in my garage, built out of salvaged NVIDIA dev kits and sheer spite. They didn't even own the damn test bed. So when Norelis' acting CEO sent a re-engagement request to my attorney, asking to discuss a possible co-ownership agreement and framework for mutual eye recognition, Bethany laughed. Actually laughed, then replied with a single sentence. Ownership cannot be shared when it was never yours. They tried to push back, claimed the spirit of innovation was collaborative, that I'd been paid a salary while work was developed. Bethany responded with timestamps that showed commits uploaded at 2:14 a.m., sketchpad scans emailed from a personal address at 11:51 on a Sunday, private cloud links to repositories logged from my home IP during company holidays. When they tried to challenge the origin of the training data, we showed receipts from datasets I'd paid for with personal funds, licensed under individual academic research exemptions. Every angle they tried, we shut it down. Clean, cold, surgical. There was no revenge, no press, no gloating, just consequence. Norelis lost more than a patent. They lost investor confidence. They lost tech leadership credibility. They lost the foundation of the one innovation that might have pushed them to acquisition readiness. And now, their competitors were lining up to buy the very thing Michelle tried to bury. Javier sent me one last message. She's gone. Quiet exit. No Slack goodbye. I deleted it. I didn't need closure. I already had a license agreement on the table and a name carved cleanly into the core of the product they'd tried to claim. Turns out, you don't have to scorch the earth to win. You just have to let the audit do the burning. 3 months later, I stood across the street from the Norelis Tech headquarters, arms crossed, coffee in hand, watching as a crane hoisted a new banner over the front doors. Same concrete building, same tinted glass, same nervous interns milling around like caffeine-starved ducklings. But the logo beneath the name, that was new, smaller, sleeker, etched into the steel trim in clean sans serif font, powered by Oxalis Systems. My LLC. Valtryek had gone public with the joint venture a week prior, joint in branding only. The tech, solely licensed through Oxalis. The press release used words like strategic integration, synergistic uplift, and trailblazing innovation in AI compression. But all I saw was one thing: validation in font size 12, Times New Roman, black ink, signed and countersigned. I never went back inside that building. Didn't need to. The silence after my exit did all the talking. Michelle, gone. No farewell Slack post, no HR send-off, just a name removed from the org chart and replaced with a placeholder. The official line was that she'd moved on to pursue new opportunities. Unofficially, she'd been gagged by the legal department. Her NDA was so tight she couldn't even use the word patent at dinner parties. Poetic, really, how the woman who tried to control every conversation left without a single word. What came next was almost laughable. Norelis quietly rewrote their I policy. The same board that let Michelle bulldoze through my team now issued a revised statement titled Innovation, Ownership, Ethics, and Policy. The second clause spelled it out in black and white. All innovation developed outside of core-funded scope remains the sole property of its creator unless otherwise contracted in writing. No retroactive grabs, no post hoc reinterpretation, just a bitter little mea culpa folded into corporate language so sterile it practically bled. A few of the engineers reached out. Quietly, cautiously. Some wanted jobs, others just wanted to say sorry. I didn't hold grudges, but I didn't hand out invites either. The ones who stood by when Michelle took the wheel could stay on the ship as it drifted sideways. Inside Valtryek, we were already pushing the next gen. Faster compression, live model adaptation, real-time telemetry for large-scale training environments, and this time, my name wasn't on a sticky note in the background. It was on the filing, the documentation, the license terms, and the damn marketing material. H. Salin, founder, Oxalis Systems. As for me, I wasn't trying to build an empire. I just wanted credit where credit was due. Ownership, not applause. Truth, not spin. And I got it. Not by yelling, not by fighting, but by preparing for the storm before the clouds even formed. I took one last sip of coffee, watching that banner settle into place like it had always belonged there. The breeze tugged at the corners. Somewhere inside, a new CTO was probably giving a speech about innovation and ethics and all the things Michelle had steamrolled on her way down. But none of that mattered. The work lived on. So did the name beneath the patent. You don't need a badge to own the room. just the signature that came before theirs.